I become extremely concerned about the distortions that one hears in relation to immigration, to what happened on Sunday, and I am increasingly concerned about what those distortions mean and who listens to them. I was watching a video from Matt Walsh, who's a well-known podcaster, American, who criticizes Australia incessantly, and he made some statements in relation to American shootings, justifying the fact, I guess, that everybody in the United States must carry a gun because that would eliminate the number of shootings. We need to note that in America, they've had 384 or so mass shootings. In this year alone, we have had two. That if we were to extrapolate that out, we would need to have some, I don't know, some 30, 40 years, I think they said, of mass shootings to sort of equate to all of their mass shootings. So it's unrealistic to suggest that here in Australia, because we've got relatively controlled gun laws and we don't have a Second Amendment, which entitles us to shoot everybody, that therefore we are somehow disadvantaged. And Matt particularly wanted to cite some information which I struggled with, and that was that most mass shootings in the United States, according to someone like Walsh, occur because of immigration and because of black people. And I did a search through ChatGPT to find out exactly whether that was the case, and it was so untrue that it means that we need to discuss what they are. So when I fed it into ChatGPT, I got the following response, and that is perpetrators are overwhelmingly male. That's around 95 to 98%. They are acting alone. They are known to the community, and they often experience grievances, crisis, or perceived humiliation. That's the one variable that barely ever changes. Everything else varies. Shooters broadly reflect the US population more than they reflect crime stereotypes. White Americans commit a plurality of mass shootings, often a majority, which aligns with their share of the population. No racial group is disproportionately responsible for mass shootings once population size and event definitions are considered. So whether you want to believe what ChatGPT says or not, they are the facts. And what concerns me is that someone like Walsh is spreading clearly according to those facts produced by ChatGPT, is wrong. It is simply wrong. And it's disingenuous, doesn't even cover it. And so what we find here in Australia is that we're being bombarded by right-wing propaganda, which basically is saying that anybody who comes from another country should be disallowed or should be, firstly, not allowed into Australia. And secondly, the way it's moving is that those people that come to Australia that are Muslim, come from a different faith, for whatever reason, those people don't fit into the Australian culture. And as I've often said before, I'd need someone to describe for me what they believe that culture to be. Because once people like Pauline Hanson start to tell us what they think that culture should be, it is clear that they are racist. It is a culture which advocates for white Australians, for a white culture, for a Eurocentric culture. This is the culture that these people want to have here in Australia. And also the other issue for me is that no one can say exactly what policies should have been installed or what attitudes or beliefs should have taken place that would have ensured that these two lone gunmen, as it basically turned out to be, we should have known that they were going to do what they did. The final issue, I guess, I want to raise with you, and I just want to say to people, please subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for further notifications, do what you need to do to let me know what you think about some of these issues, because this is going to be an ongoing conversation we're going to have, and I'm going to be making podcast after podcast talking about this as further issues come to light. And one of the problems for me is that it appears that ASIO may have made some mistakes. Now, I think at some level we need to talk about what those mistakes may have been, and that they may not have been diligent enough to identify these two guys, particularly their travel to the Philippines in order to get some training around fighting, basically. And I just saw an interview from a guy on the ABC who was an expert in this area, who simply said that anybody can travel overseas, not just to the Philippines, but also to America. And if they've got the money, they can pay for this sort of training to know how to shoot guns and all that sort of shit. And I guess know how to shoot people, basically. And I would object to that of any description. But nevertheless, apparently those services are available. They're available in the Philippines. And they may be available to people that have got an ISIS leaning or a radical Muslim leaning. So I think that ASIO may have stuffed up. And are we in a position to say that they have? Don't know, because we simply don't have all the facts. But could they have known more? Yes. Were there laws in place that would have enabled them to arrest these people or interrogate them further? Probably there are. But why didn't they do that? Could that have stopped it? Who knows? We don't have answers to any of these questions. So we could lay the blame at ASIO. Do we need to lay the blame at Albanese? Could Albanese have been stronger in relation to his statements around anti-Semitism? I don't know. I think and I believe that he has been. I think the problem that they have is that Albanese, to his credit from my perspective, is a softer, gentler man than what you would have through a Peter Dutton, a Morrison, and particularly a Tony Abbott. That he is more rational in his approach, and he would prefer to legislate to have things done rather than to make statements that are offensive to others. Should he have spoken out more about what Netanyahu had said? Yes, he should have. I agree. Should he have made statements about some of the things that Donald Trump has said? Definitely should have done that. He chooses not to because he is a guy who insists on walking along that fine line. And I think Albo's pretty good at that. So what does the right wing want? I believe that they want someone who is in your face, who's a Donald Trump, who would make statements about someone like Rob Reiner that are offensive and that no one really gives a shit about whether they're offensive or not. That they want someone who is bullish, who is unhinged, who says what he thinks, which is a problem because Albanese doesn't do any of that. And if that's what they want, and if that's the type of Australia they expect to have, then many of us need to push back against it because it's not the type of Australia we want. We understand that there needs to be changes. Those changes we may argue, and rightfully so, that maybe they're a little bit late. But changes need to be made. We understand that. And of course, the other problem then becomes, if we are having those changes, are we going to turn this country into more of a political police state? And that would be my fear, is that if we had a right-wing government, such as Susan Lee or Tony Abbott in particular, would we wind up with an extreme right-wing government? Would we have a government that becomes so supported by one nation that it denigrates all of our human rights, that it becomes a state which is surveilling all of us to almost the extent that they now do in the United States and to some extent in the UK? So is that the sort of country that we want? No, we don't. So how do we deal with anti-Semitism? I think that as horrible as this event was on Sunday, that many of us many of us are now saying enough is enough and that we will stand up against it. Now, the problem is that there's a minority of people who support what happened. Most of them, they're quiet at the moment, but I'm sure most of them are neo-Nazis as well, as also some of the radical people in the Muslim movement and the ISIS movement. And, I am tired. Sorry about this rant, everybody, but I am so tired of the continual playing of some of the comments and the speeches made by some of the Muslim clerics after October the 7th. I'm horrified at what they said, and it is wrong. I am not horrified at the fact that there have been hundreds of thousands of people taken to the streets protesting about what the IDF have done in Gaza. And I'm horrified at the fact that for many of us who don't like the genocide who object to the genocide that's Gaza, that for some reason that gets conflated as Jew hate. It's not true, but there are people on my comment section, and there'll be some people who will comment now who will object to the fact that I may object to what's happening to the Palestinian people. And maybe we're at a crossroads where we have to decide that and take a firm stand against anti-Semitism, and maybe it's true that we haven't done enough. And maybe I'm partly responsible. Maybe I haven't taken a strong enough stand either. But I am from now on. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to shift from my stance on what has happened in Gaza or anything that refers to the effort to eradicate a race of people, no matter who they are. So, look, that's my rant. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Remember to subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for further notifications. Do what you need to do to let us know what you think at this particular troubling time. Take care.